Good morning. It is Monday morning once again. It's at the Dutch Mentor Monday morning chat about leadership. Today, I'm honored to be joined by Jason Tenzer. As you can hear, my voice is still in the recovery phase post COVID. So make sure you're vaccinated, you're boosted, and you stay in optimum health that you too can fight off this Omicron virus if it hits you at home. But without further ado, let's go to the guest of honor today. Jason, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? And thank you for joining us this morning.
Sure. Morning, Walter, and morning, everybody. And thanks for having me as part of this broadcast here. I'm happy to be here, and it's good to see an old familiar face. And I guess I'll start off by letting everybody know sort of where I am right now. I spent about 10, 11 years of my career in hospital administration, but then made a transition over to where I am right now. And I'm working for a pharmaceutical company right now and have taken on different levels of leadership and opportunities within the company. And currently am now a national account executive working in our payer team. Essentially, I work with a specific payer from a national account, doing all the negotiations with all of our contracting and extended services, et cetera, that we work on with them. So building sort of a high level relationship with a very visible account and working on enhancing that relationship and essentially what pharma does and how we work with the PBMs to be able to provide medications for patients and the services that they need.
Thank you, Jason. And again, you should be very proud of the journey that you have taken into where you are today. And I'm sure you have big dreams ahead of you, and it will take one step at a time to get there. I would like to spin back the wheel and go down memory lane a little bit. Is that, I talk about emerging leaders all of the time. And I really think it is essentially, the responsibility of the emerging leader to find a pathway. So to define what is my big dream and what are the little steps that I can take every single day. Healthcare Leaders of New York is an organization that is rather large, 4,000 plus members. It is a tremendous network within the New York metropolitan area. But again, they cannot do for you. Tell me a little bit about your journey as you joined, and really why did you join? And as you came into the organization, what was your initial vision of what it is that you want to get out of that and what you end up doing with the network in order to gain the skills, knowledge, and abilities to lead within a safe environment?
Yeah, and it's a good ask, Walter, because I think HLNY was sort of key to my career development. And while I didn't necessarily have any of the connections from HLNY to the job that I'm doing right now, I got all the experience through what I did with the organization. And it all started actually in graduate school. So I've always been a big proponent of talking to students, actually part-time teaching at Hofstra now in the graduate university classes and promoting HLNY to them as well. Because I know it starts when you're in that student position, when you're looking to figure out how do I become a leader? And I've had many discussions about the chicken egg theory of they want experience and I don't have any, but how do I get the experience? Because I'm required to have experience to get the experience, right? It's just sort of this conundrum that people find themselves in. And HLNY was a real pathway to being able to gain experiences that I normally wouldn't have gotten in the workplace. And when I say it started in grad schools, I joined the chapter of American College of Healthcare Executives in graduate school. And was able to actually lead that organization in graduate school. So I started in my graduate years in my early 20s of leading a chapter that was part of New York Medical College, that was part of their ACHE chapter, gained some experience there, learned the trials and tribulations of being able to herd the cats of an organization. It's really quite the task of getting everybody organized and motivated. And that gave me a lot of foundational experience. If anything, I always say, you have to learn sort of the dysfunctions before you can really manage the functions, right? So when I learned were the things that we weren't able to accomplish, I brought that experience forward and never wanted to stop being part of the organization. And that's how I became part of HLNY. I thought coming out of graduate school, how was I going to be qualified to be part of an organization that had leaders who were hospital presidents, et cetera, part of it? And it really was just a matter of raising your hand, opening your mouth and saying, how do I get involved? And you'll be surprised at what the reception you'll get, because everyone's always looking for people to volunteer and people to be part of this organization. HLNY has been one of the most open places that anybody will take, any helping hands that are willing. So just even standing up and saying, I want to be part of this is certainly part of the getting involved. And I took progressive leadership positions within the organization because I was willing to put myself out there and do the extracurricular time. And I think that's the first point I really want everyone to understand, is that developing yourself, like you said, Walter, is super important, but it's going to be an extracurricular activity. You're going to have to do your day job at the same time. And if you're doing this on the side, understand that this is supporting your own personal career. And I got involved in HL&Y and spent a lot of hours outside of my regular working hours, but they were invaluable. I networked with people who were in higher level leadership positions who taught me lessons and things and told me about their struggles. Even when you think that you put these people on a pedestal, this is a hospital president, they must have it down. And you realize they struggle on a daily basis as well. Allows you to really get to know them on a personal level. And for me, being part of HL&Y was just such a great experience, because I was able to be part of a committee. And then soon, once leadership moved on and people progressed, right? And it's sort of that moving up the corporate ladder.
Mhm.
So people were moving up the ladder, and then it vacated positions above, which I was more than willing to take on, and became a committee chair, able to lead a small committee. So it was sort of taking these little baby steps, right? Leading a small committee of folks, understanding the challenges that come with that, and showing the capabilities, and really realizing in leadership, especially in your middle management type of positions where you're leading and managing at the same time, you're really looking at trying to manage your group, but then also you have to report back into the greater organization. So it really allowed me to learn how the functionalities work. And as I became more of a committee leader, I ran for an elected position, which obviously when you get elected to office, there's a little more pressure, because accountability, if people chose you and you have a responsibility to do for them what they asked of you to do. And eventually became president and ran the organization. And I can say that running HL&Y was like being CEO of a small corporation. You really learn about how many layers of organization there are. And that when you're in that type of high level leadership position, and when you mentioned having goals, my goals are always to be at the top and to lead organizations. I want to get into high level leadership strategy positions. And I think that there's a fine line between being a leader and a manager. And I think when you got to that place of being in the leadership position of HL&Y, I was really leading. I had many managers below me who were managing the day-to-day tasks, but it was my responsibility to create a vision for the organization and sort of take a couple things that I wanted to get accomplished and give everybody that vision, and take everyone along the ride with me and understand how they could work for me and with me to get things done. And I think that was really where I really got a good view as what it was really like to be a high level leader. And it was about really creating vision and getting people to be part of that vision and understanding how they fit into it and being part of that ride. And I think that's really where it became that dynamic of understanding how to really lead the organization and feeling like you had a few thousand people behind you, not only counting on you, but rooting for you. And that's really where you want to get to in a level of leadership positions.
Yeah, thank you, Jason, for taking us down that memory lane. I cannot agree with you more that it is there's an opportunity in every stage. Of course, with every organization, there's HLY is 4,000 plus members, but if you really think about it, it's less than 50 who are super active. So when you talk about the time commitment, give us a little bit of introspective on how much time you're talking about. You talk about 2 hours a week, 4 hours a week. Well, how much time did you spend on average? Because I think people overthink this. That if I become a committee chair or co-chair, now I'm committed to this for 8 hours a week. How can I possibly do this with my family, with sporting events, with hobbies? But what does it take to be active on a committee? And of course, as you continue to climb the ranks, there are different time commitments and
Yeah, and
opportunities for that matter too.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point, Walter, right? As you start to climb the ladder, the time commitments get greater, but the responsibilities also get different. So it's more about delegation, right? So you can manage
Mhm.
your time better because you have more people working with you. But I think this is what really is where people started it's that failure to launch, and that I call it white page syndrome, right? We've all written the paper where you start that blank document and the cursor's blinking at you and you're just like, where do I start? And this is where everybody has that hard launching point, is how many hours am I committing to? You'll never quite know until you actually get into it. And that's when you start at the low level, the expectations oftentimes are, how much time do you have? A lot of people, when I led committees, and a lot of people who led committees for me, I used to really, because HLNY is a volunteer organization, people aren't here because of their day-to-day employment. It's extracurricular and they're volunteering. You have to be sensitive to that. And I always told people, and I think it continues to this day in any place I've ever volunteered or been part of, people ask you, how much time do you have? I'll give you responsibility based on what you can give me. We'll even take a couple hours a week or an hour a week, however many it might be. If you want to get involved, we'll take it. And I think what winds up happening is that people give what they can, and you have to know your limits and be honest with yourself. So you have to really think about it. It's like taking on a construction project. You budget X and you're always going to spend X plus 20%. So if you say you
Hmm.
have an hour, you're probably going to spend an hour and a half. Make sure you know that you have a little bit of cushion and give that time, and then see what it is and be honest about it, right? That's what's the most important. If you're finding yourself pressed, talk to your leadership and let them know I'm having trouble. Don't try and struggle. I've actually had people who worked underneath me as volunteers who were struggling and weren't open about it, and then wound up getting a bad rap, right? This can go great for you, and it can also go
Yep.
negatively if you aren't able to show up. So just be honest with yourself and your leadership. And I find that when people started to volunteer, they either realized it was too much commitment for them and bowed out. And if you're honest with you, everyone will let you go graciously. It's not a shameful thing. You have to understand that. But as people started to give an hour, they realized they had more things they wanted to accomplish, and they gave two or three. And then that progressed from there on. And I think if you're at a volunteer on a committee type of relationship, you're probably giving an hour at most a week. It's not really that big a deal. Usually it's like a monthly conference call that lasts an hour, and then some tasks here and there, depending on what you take on. As you start leading committees, then the time really becomes how much are you looking to accomplish, right? So I always say it's sort of an equation that's based upon what you're looking to get done. If you set big goals, you're going to spend big time. If you set small goals and try and get things done, then you might be able to give a little lower of a time commitment. But as I moved through the ranks, when I was president, I probably spent 25 hours a week on it, but gladly, because I knew that that was a job that I wanted to take on. And I think as I was in the lower ranks, I watched the people above me and I observed how many hours they spent, and I realized what they did. So when you get in at the lower level, start taking inventory about what people are doing and how much time they're spending. I think you'll start to get a better idea. But at the low level, it could be as little as an hour or two a week at most. And as you start moving up, it can increase. And as I said, when you're president, it could be 20, 30 hours a week, but a lot of
Yeah.
it is delegating. So you have to really think of what type of time. It's an evolution of the kind of time you're spending.
Yeah, I mean, on the end of the day, it's an time investment in yourself, right? It is that, again, as an emerging leader, you have to gain those experiences and gain the skills, knowledge, and abilities to become a highly effective leader. And HLY provides that safe zone to be able to do that. Again, taking action is the first step, right? If you don't take the action, you will never get anywhere. The second one, of course, is the communication. And never forget the foundation that it is about your mental, spiritual, physical, and relationship wellness. If you don't have those four things in order, you cannot be functional at work, in your real job, or in your volunteer role itself. Now, beyond HLY, of course, there's a mothership called ACHI. There too are regions, representatives, and there's a connection to that. Just briefly describe what the connection between HLNY and ACHI is at large, and how how you can get engaged in that as well, which again creates more opportunity for development and expanding your network.
Yeah, and that's actually a great point. I'm glad you brought that up, Walter, because actually HLNY, back when I started and joined after graduate school, it wasn't even HLNY. It was another group of organizations that operated and functioned independently. And I remember being part of the decision to be part of this normal corporate structure that they enveloped. And so ACHE decided to say all the chapters are going to become official. And if you become part of the official chapter leadership group, then you'll be officially tied into the organization. And we sat and toiled for a day in a workshop saying, do we want to do this or do we want to stay independent? The organization, I think, made a great choice in being part of the larger organization and becoming an official chapter, because it gave that real solid connection to the larger organization, which is tens of thousands of people, if not more, across the entire country, that has a real legitimacy to it. And that region, as you mentioned, is that real connection to it. The chapters are official. So there are people that are part of ACHE that are full-time, they're regional directors that work for the organization, that keep the chapter engaged with what's going on in the greater organization. But that region is an elected official who's meant to be the conduit between the organization and what's going on at the voluntary leadership levels within the greater national organization. And so that's where that connection comes in. The regions will be that parlay between where the chapter gets the insight, and the region sort of sits on the board of the HLNY chapter. So they become an integrated part of how the organization functions. And then we get tied into the larger organization, but with initiatives and opportunities to be able to participate. And I think that's where it sort of comes in as you become part of the leadership structure of the local chapter. You start getting extended opportunities. Oftentimes, when I was president, we would get calls for committee appointments. The end of every year, the presidents do get a call out to say that we need 5 or 6 volunteers for committees next year. Please submit names. And oftentimes, the visibility of who's under the president knows they know who needs the opportunity or who wants the opportunity, who's willing to give, and we put those names in the hat. And I've been on national committees, the fellowship for ACHE. I've been on a committee that's helped create the questions and create that level of exam. We've been on nominating types of committees. We had a website committee where the ACG website got redone. There was also committees about how they decide how organizational membership structure was going to work. And you get the chance to participate at that national level. So we actually were able to get opportunities if you're in the leadership at the local level to be part of that national organization. And then you get a real insight about what the leaders of the national organization are doing. And you start to really see that at the local level, there's still more steps to go. And there's certainly sometimes I have those goals of wanting to be part of that national organization leadership. It's a significantly larger commitment. And at the time in my career, I'm not necessarily there right now to give that time. And that's why I'm, again, being honest with myself about what I can do and what I can't do. But certainly getting those insights and seeing how that functions, you get connectedness to people in amazing positions. You also get to see the dynamics of different styles of leadership. I've seen so many people in different styles and adopted certain things that I liked that I saw. And everyone sort of sees what works for you. The more exposure to get to these high level leaders, the more you get to sort of take some insights and inventory about what you want to do with your leadership style and develop your own.
Yep. Thank you for explaining that a little bit further. So with that said, I think one of the fundamentals of HLNY is to get people interested in the industry at large, leadership and within the healthcare. To gain your fellowship, the board, become a board certified fellow at the American Council of Healthcare Executives, or your FACHI credentials, is an end goal. To me, I always say it's really the beginning. I see many people who go through this arduous process and graduate and say, "Hey, look what I got now! I got the certificate. Good, and now I'm a fellow." I always say congratulations, but the journey really starts today. The journey as a fellow is about giving back and about making sure that you stay up on the industry itself and you are a voice. So tell me a little bit about how you see your role as a fellow and what are you doing with that status today to be able to pay it forward to the next generation.
Yeah, and that was funny that you bring up fellowship, because I was in graduate school looking at becoming a fellow, and that was certainly a goal. I want to be a fellow. I want to gain that credential. And as you start getting toward it, you realize that it's a significant journey, and it starts with just that first step of wanting it, right? And then you kind of go into getting the criteria, the credentials. You have to take the exam. And a lot of people do see that as the end goal. I got it. You have to maintain it. So there's certainly ways to keep everybody honest in being able to stay active on it. I think the first thing is, once you get it, being proud of it is certainly an important thing. And that piece of paper, it's definitely something that is an accomplishment, and you feel very proud of oneself once you get it. I use the credential on my business cards, on my email signature. So I think that sort of reminds you all the time when you see it, I've earned it, but I have to represent it. And I think as you see it in your doctrine, on your business cards and your email signature, or anywhere else that you use it, it reminds you that you have a duty to stay with it and to represent it well. The requirements of continuing education, first and foremost, keep you staying in the know and on a constant learning journey. But I think also paying it forward is bringing new fellows into the fold. I've been a reference for countless people and coached them through the process, but also reminded them that getting the letters and getting the fellowship after your name is certainly a place where you have to get to first. But once you get there, you have to remember that means that you're now certified. You're board certified in healthcare management, and that your responsibility is to maintain with what's going on in current events. I think a lot of people were able to really show their muster during COVID when people adapted to what was going on and showed their real leadership and managed the healthcare system, which we were able to persevere. And it certainly was the biggest challenge that I think all of us have faced in this level of generation right now. And looking at it and looking at all the fellows who led that and seeing that their extended levels of education, their exposure to journal articles, and their constant learning journey has prepared them to be ready for that. And I think that's where people start to see is that if you maintain the fellowship credential, if you have that pride to represent it well, that you'll continue on that learning journey. You'll never stop learning, and you'll always be reminded that you have to continue to evolve. What I took on the test 12 years ago, I can't remember how long it's been now, is almost obsolete. I was actually joking with some folks when I was at Congress a couple of weeks ago who just took the exam. A friend of mine just passed and congratulated him. And we were talking about the exam questions and that there are experimental questions on it. So questions they're trying out with people to see if they're going to take. And I remember the questions that were experimental on my exam that they hadn't yet verified were about electronic medical records.
Yeah,
Now that's so obsolete. That's just the standard issue. So you laugh at it and you realize that if you don't stick with it, what you've learned and what you've done to accomplish it becomes obsolete, and you have to continue on that learning journey. And that reminds you every day that you have to keep doing that.
yeah. Yeah, I think the key thing is making that initial commitment, right? It's no different than if you want to be a CEO of a hospital, you can't just wake up in the morning and say, I'm going to be a CEO of a hospital. That requires a commitment on your part to learn and to experience things along the way to put you in the best possible position. Becoming a fellow requires you to do certain things over an extended period of time to be ready for the Board of Governance exam, including gaining face-to-face credits that will give you the insight. Uh, so one of the responsibilities at HLY is, of course, to foster an environment of continuous learning and mentorship. And I think we both have taken it very serious. I do a lot of, obviously, I do it as a business today because I still think there's a humongous gap between people who were doing and now are in leadership positions, that we have an opportunity to work much closer with them to fill that gap quickly and set them up for success. But mentorship is very, very important on a continuous basis, right? At 15, 20 minutes every couple of weeks, a check-in to provide them. How are you positioning yourself today as a mentor, both in your current role, as well as, maybe with past students or with ACHI or with HLY?
Yeah, and I've done it formally and informally. Some of it's been through the greater organization nationally. Some has been locally. In fact, actually, it was just out of Congress. I do this every year, at least when I attend Congress, which is most years, that we do. There's a career counseling workshop. So I volunteer for a few hours to do some on-site career counseling. But I also take on long-term mentorship as a mentor to folks. It's definitely that interface and interaction with what people are willing to give as well, right? So I always talk to people who want to be mentored, and I've definitely encouraged it. When I was a leader of HLNY, we tried to create some more formal programs around it, and be able to connect some folks. We've had many different iterations of it and found some levels of success in getting people involved. But one key had always come up is that people ask to be mentored or want to have mentorship from people who are leaders above them, but they don't understand sometimes. And I think this is why I always tell everybody, you need to really understand this before you start to engage, is that you will get out of it what you put into it. And I tell people that constantly. I am willing to give you 100% of myself, and I will show up for that 15, 20 minutes every a couple weeks, or an hour or two for coffee or dinner once a month, whenever the frequency is. But if you put the time and effort into that, being prepared, coming with introspective questions, and knowing what you're looking to get out of it, then I am happy to give you that. But when people say, tell me how to be successful, it's such an open-ended question. It's so hard. I can't tell you all the secrets, and I don't necessarily know. I need some context. So I think people need to realize too, is that mentors can be fantastic, but you have to be able to put in the effort to get out of these folks what you want. And I think I've seen a lot of relationships that have either fizzled because the mentor has not necessarily had the time to be able to do it, or that the mentee just hasn't really put in the effort themselves. But I have had personally very fruitful relationships myself with folks who were above me when I was a lower level leader in the organization. When I was committee chair, I had mentorship from some of the presidents to say, what does it take to become president? Do I know what I need to be able to fill gaps in? And do I understand what I'm getting myself into? And I know that I had a lot of fruitful relationships because I put in significant effort to get what I could get out of those mentors. For me, being a mentor is an amazing relationship with somebody to help guide them along. And I can say that I've been very proud, either in my professional career, to mentor folks who worked for me in a very official position, and then in the volunteer space within HLNY and ACHE, and seen folks who were mentees that were just starting out, just graduated, who are now committee chairs, elected officials, and people who have evolved into the organization. And I could tell you, I probably within 20 minutes of starting a mentoring relationship with somebody can tell you they're going to be somebody and they're going to be a leader. And I've been pretty good so far about predicting some of those, because you can tell when sort of people have that. And when I see someone who has that, I'm willing to give even more of myself, because I see the effort they're putting in and it makes me want to rise to the occasion. So it's certainly about the effort you put in is what you'll get out of it.
Yeah, congratulations on that. It's so funny. I have 5 kids of myself, and if I look at my extended family, I feel like over the years of the people who have mentored and really have had that connection with, of which there are many, I almost feel like that's now my extended family, right? That they
Right.
call you in the middle of the night when the babies are born. It's truly gratifying, those moments, right? When you make that connection. It is, yeah, I feel the same. If I feel like I need to be a dentist, then maybe the chemistry is not there, and that is okay. Sometimes you might not have a match between two personalities, but again, it is taking action on part of the student to be prepared, to bring the energy, and to be respectful of time of the person that you're working with. And once you get that going, and I agree with within the first meeting or so, you will know if there's a connection and continue to build upon that. All right, as the last question, as we and a really fluid, quick 30 minutes, by the way. Normally speaking, I try to wrap it up by 20 minutes, but I think there's so much content here. It was worthy to get to 30 minutes. What is the advice you would give to a person who's just finishing the bachelor's degree, are getting into their first supervisor or mid-level manager role, who are not quite sure where to go or what to do, but they do have a big dream? What can you give them as a piece of advice as we exit today, on what they should do first, second, third?
Yeah, I think, the first thing you need to do is get into that position and understand it and start to learn it and do it to the best of your ability. I always like to think that you certainly have to do the job that's in front of you. You have to be thinking about the job that's ahead of you, but you have to always get the job that you're assigned to do done first, right before. So that's number one. Job number one is to do that job that you're doing, but not just be satisfied with doing that job every day. I think what's most important, and the second thing I would say is, aside from getting the basics of what the job requires you to get done, pick out some extra goals, go above and beyond, and put in that extra effort and find those opportunities. They won't just come across your desk. What'll come across your desk is what everyone expects of you. What won't come across your desk and what you go and seek out is what people aren't expecting of you. And when you can accomplish what people aren't expecting of you and you can get those things done, that's when people take notice. Everyone says brass tacks is getting the job done every single day. Doing the extras, going above and beyond, making something better, improving upon something, taking that extra effort is where people get noticed and start to rise up. And I always say, never be afraid to admit what you don't know. Know what you know what you don't know, and ask questions, especially if you're as you frame the question, that folks coming just out of degrees and in lower level rankings, no one's expecting you to know everything, and don't try to think that you have to know everything. There's no shame in admitting what you don't know and seeking out those answers. It'll show modesty, but it'll also show that you're willing to learn. And some people may not expect you to know it, so don't be afraid to admit that, because the more information you can start to gather, the better you'll be able to go. And just learn. And the third is sort of learn and take in from others around you. Pick up leadership styles. Find little things that are done. I can tell you, someone who hired me 12, well, geez, it's more than that. It's probably 18 years ago now that I think about it. My career is longer than I like to admit some days. The first person I worked for who hired me and took a chance in hospital administration, a shout out to Daphne Semet out there at Mount Sinai, who is still there. And she gave me some always wise catchphrases. But one time, I think the best thing, the one that stuck with me and I have used many times over the years, is done is better than perfect. And sometimes you just have to get it done, and it can't be perfect. So don't harp on trying to get it done to the exact standard you want. And sometimes you just need to get it done. That's sometimes what's required of you, getting the job done. Don't focus on perfection, focus on accomplishment. And that's sometimes she taught me. And sometimes I try to still aim for perfection, but I always thought it stuck with me. But there's so many things that have come across my desk over the years. Pull those in, take them, become part of the fabric of who you become and who you are. And those little key moments sometimes will stick with you a lot longer than you might imagine, and cherish them, because those are the leadership skills that'll take you throughout your career. And those little tidbits of information will be the things that help you become successful.
Yeah, rock solid advice there. I think that is a great way to get people started and really to think about that. I would add one thing to it is that to start understanding the difference between managing people versus leading people. Right, as leaders, we lead we manage process and we lead people, and especially coming out of doing positions, that transition from doing to leading is rather large. So seek mentorship early on in the process. It is quite okay not to know everything, and really learning by sharing with others is really a powerful way to getting the job done. And it does not need to be perfect. Jason, phenomenal conversation this morning. Thank you for your time. Look forward to connecting again in the future on another project, another way. I wish you much success in your career journey. I see bright days ahead of for yourself, and I look forward to connecting on our next HLY. Maybe meet the past presidents or some other event.
Yes, the same to you, Walter, and thanks for having me today. I appreciate it. It's great to see you, and always appreciate being connected. And looking forward to future meetings soon. Soon in the future here, hopefully we'll be back in live in person. I look forward to seeing you and being
It'd be
able to shake
nice.
your hand again soon.
Take care, Jason. Have a wonderful day.
Take care, Walter.